Brian, we're gonna just pause there. This was, oh my goodness, what an incredible album or EP. We have Bryan Beller here with us today to talk about a remix of an album that came out before this awesome, huge double CD record called Scenes from the Flood, and the new remix is called Calm Before the Storm. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me, Anthony. I know it can get confusing probably. Like this is a these are this new album, this EP, this Calm Before the Storm thing here is a remix of three songs,
Yep.
not from Scenes from the Flood, which I can't believe is 6 years ago now. That's crazy. But from my 2008 album, Thanks in Advance. That's going way back now. We're talking what 17 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where, I mean, my profile obviously kind of really increased once the Aristocrats started, once I started playing with Joe Satriani. Uh, I was working on this even before I did the Steve Vai tour, so on the original album. And, I feel like some of those compositions stood up, but maybe the mixes didn't stand up. And that's on me. It's not on the mix engineer because he's great. And that guy, Mark Nemec, ended up going on to do a lot of Aristocrat stuff, including some of the classic albums like the first Aristocrats album and Culture Clash and parts of You Know What. I just drove those mixes into a ditch all these years ago. It was too complicated. I didn't know what I was doing. At some point, I was just like, you know what? I would love to go back with Forrester Savell at the mix engineer helms, the guy who mixed the Aristocrats Duck and Scenes from the Flood, and just give these guys another shot, especially these really intricate compositions like the one you just played, Love, Terror, Adrenaline.
Oh my goodness. So I didn't know. I read your Bandcamp page, and there's a link if people
Yeah.
didn't see it. Bryan Beller, BryanBeller .bandcamp.com, where you can buy this album, and I just bought it. It's really great, and there's a lot of great liner notes that provide context here. So Brian, it sounds like you were going through quite the time leading
Well,
up or through this and leading up to Scenes from a Flood.
yeah, as I explained in the thing, I mean, for anybody who's kind of new to this whole thing, when I'm writing for the Aristocrats, we're here to have fun. We're here to play a lot of notes and take the piss and have fun. We're not like trying to be serious or, I mean, you can have a nice ballad like Flatlands, but it's not supposed to be a serious, introspective thing. Uh, but my solo stuff is really different. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, uh, and Roger Waters, like him or hate him, kind of created this like really deeply personal kind of angsty thing in prog that I've always been really interested in. I always want my albums to kind of feel like a Pink Floyd album, even if they don't sound like it. And that's what I try to do with Scenes from the Flood, make a big double album. But before that was Thanks in Advance, and I wrote this album about like kind of like a life restart. I was kind of getting into this whole positive intentionality thing, and it actually did produce a lot of really good results. Uh, and Thanks in Advance, the whole album concept is about coming from a place of gratitude, which is something you hear a lot of people talk about. But I actually went through this experience and did the work and was really living in that intentional space for a while. And there's a lot of, walking around saying everything sucks all day long, obviously is going to make everything suck. Who wants that? But as the years went on, I kind of ran into some hard reality with employing some of that stuff and just kind of looking at my own life and then looking at the world kind of produced this cognitive dissonance that eventually I worked into Scenes from the Flood, which is this big angsty record. So I thought calling this Calm Before the Storm would be a cute little bridge between Thanks in Advance and Scenes from the Flood. And that's why it's got kind of the original artwork on here, but like a less pretty version of it. Let's just say that.
Well, I want to say, like in your Bandcamp page, you said most people probably don't even know that this record exists. I didn't know. I had never heard these songs before, and
That's really something because you're really in the center of the scene. And, you know, I don't think anyone has ever accused me of being insufficiently self-promotional online. Like, I understand that marketing is a part of the game here. I worked so hard to promote those first two solo albums, View in 2003 and Thanks in Advance in 2008. And like the world is just so big, you need to in order to grow your profile, you need to attach yourself to bigger artists unless you're doing something so technically stupendous that people are just going to be mind blown in the first five notes. And that's not really what I do as a bass player anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
it came out a long time ago, and I'm glad that people are taking another look at this stuff. That was kind of the purpose of it, also.
Well, and it's so hugely different a listening experience. I listened to the originals this morning, which I found on streaming, and then I listened to the files I downloaded from Bandcamp, and it's almost unfathomable that stuff you tracked 17 plus years ago could sound this good. It sounds like a record it could have been recorded, last week or last year. It's really well engineered. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Again, we were 2008, tools were different. Even the good sounding records in 2008 were slightly more compressed and not quite as big and open as they are now. And Forrester Savell is just a remarkably talented audio engineer. I don't know if anybody knows about him or knows that how he's an Australian guy. He was primarily known for producing and engineering a band called Karnivool, and there's a 2009 album called Sound Awake that the first two songs sound so mind-blowing. Everybody was just like, it was one of those rare albums where it was like, who mixed this? The album was great. The Karnivool guys are great. I love that material, but it really was kind of like, who mixed this? It
Hmm.
sounds insane. So that's how we brought him into the Aristocrats fold, and I brought him into working with me personally.
Yeah, Karnivool's got some great music.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who are really far away, like Australia, we
Yeah.
just interviewed Fayan Zek and listened through his new album, Intercosmic
Uh-huh.
Spiral. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome record.
What a unique artist, and that stuff was recorded so long ago. His process takes a long time, and it's worth the wait. It's really, really unique.
Hmm.
Uh, Kind of this weird mix of like Zappa and Vi and like super hippie trippy stuff, very psychedelic. It's there's almost no explaining. You just have to hear it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the lineup on this EP, well, there's almost nobody on like the roster changes for all the three songs. So talk
Yeah,
us about, your band. How did you assemble this roster for the original album, and tell us about the three performances.
the original album has even more lineups on it than just these three, which are all different. It was just
Yeah.
I I like the idea of like having, different players for different styles, but I realize in retrospect that having different players on every song creates mixed continuity problems. And it's one of the things that if I do another solo record of mine, I might look to have a consistent group of people do it. But back then I was like, let's have these guys for this and this guys for that and these guys for that. So on Greasy Wheel, which is like this really kind of just old school kind of funk fusion tune, very Schofieldy, I guess. It's my old crew of best friends. It's Joe Travers on drums and Rick Musalam on lead guitar and Jeff Babco playing Hammond organ. Uh, Everybody knows who Mike Keneally is, hopefully, the Zappa guitarist. He's done a ton of work with everybody. Rick Musalam is in Mike Keneally's band. He's done a lot of really cool stuff locally also. And Jeff Babco is a big fusion guy. He's in the Jimmy Kimmel band, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, that's his main gig. But it was just there was the right group of people for that song. Just this kind of very greasy, kind of grindy, kind of lowrider meets Schofield kind of thing. Uh, Cave Dweller, the second song on there, was much more of a dirge. It's like this very, very slow, heavy dirge, and there was a very specific kind of Michael Landau thing that I was going for there. I'm not ashamed to admit that the song was an homage to some of the stuff that he'd done, and I even got the drummer that he'd been playing with, Toss Panos, to do it. Because one of my favorite albums in the world is Michael Landau Live 2000. If you don't have that album and you're a fan of guitar, you just have to stop what you're doing and get that album. So that's just me and Toss, and of course, Griff Peters on guitar, who created this massive soundscape of really, really heavy sounding vintage guitars in a big room and made that song go. Now, both those songs, Greasy Wheel and Cave Dweller, ended up being on an Aristocrats live album because they were part of the Aristocrats original live set when we didn't have enough material to do a whole show. In the first album, we didn't have enough songs to do a whole concert. So we did the songs that we wrote together for the album, but then we also brought in our solo stuff to fill out the set. And so I brought those two songs, Greasy Wheel and Cave Dweller. So a lot of people probably know them from the version on the Aristocrats live album, Boing Will Do It Live, and Guthrie playing guitar and Marco playing drums. So I think it would be interesting for someone who hadn't heard the original versions of these songs, and especially now that they've been remixed, to check them out. And then, of course, there's the third song, which is the one that you played to start off the show, which is called Love, Terror, Adrenaline. I just decided to write the most difficult song I could write. I mean, I wanted to, evoke like someone having a panic attack. And I wrote this very kind of difficult, stuttering melody. It's so difficult. It's 10 minutes long, but in the end of it, it kind of opens up into this kind of majestic, progressive, coda, big melody thing. And that's Mike Keneally on impossible guitar all over the place, and Marco Miniman on drums, on impossible drums, because it's a very, very difficult song. And I'd known him only for a couple years back then. This was 2007 when I asked him to do this. We knew each other, but we didn't know each other that well. I did know that he was capable of playing anything. I already knew that. And so him being a Zappa fan and him also being into heavy music like Crimson, he was playing with Adrian Belew. I thought that he was the right guy for this. And Keneally and Miniman just killed on this song. So it's a really, and this song in particular had so many layers and so many parts. It was just a complete mixed nightmare for anybody. Even when I sent it to Forrester, he wrote me back. He was like, "Okay," but listen to what he did with it.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. All right, let's take a listen to Greasy Wheel, since you kind of set that one up. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is such a great record.
Oh, thank you.
These songs are so cool, honestly. And it's funny, we just had Joe Travers. We just interviewed him
Oh
about
yeah.
Yeah, had we did a video on Sofa, and he talked about
Cool.
the re-release. And then we had Mike on for to talk about Progcast or Progstock, and then the tour you guys are doing shortly
Uh-huh.
after.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't want to forget about that.
Yeah, tell us.
What we're gonna be doing, it's gonna be the original Mike Keneally Beer for Dolphins band lineup of the quartet. Mike and Joe Travers on drums and me on bass and Rick Masson on guitar. And we're gonna play Prague Stock in New Jersey in early October, and then we're gonna do five quick dates from New York to Chicago. And that's it. And it's been many years since this lineup has toured, so if you're into that sort of thing, you should check it out. We're even going to play one of the songs from Scenes from the Flood on that tour.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hoping to make it to the Fort Worth show. I'm in Phoenix, hoping to fly out to Indiana for that show. And there was some. Oh yeah, Rick is a way better guitar player than I even remember. Like I got to see you guys play at NAMM with
Uh-huh.
Julie Cord at the Blue Mouth Productions show, or I think it was
Oh, that
that.
was a while ago already.
Yeah, a long time ago. But Beer for Dolphins is one of like the strongest live acts I've ever seen. You guys are
Oh.
really amazing. So much energy.
Well, Mike, for years before I got connected with Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and the Aristocrats, I was playing shows with Mike Keneally all over the place. I mean, we did some really, really hardcore touring. We played a ton of stuff. And Mike really, in a lot of ways, kind of trained me to be the musician that I am today. I learned so much of what I know about live music, improv, taking things to other places, all the rest of that stuff. Always having your antenna up for Mike.
Yeah, and you've got shows coming up for Aristocrats as well, right?
Well, we have a big European tour next year. That's the next thing. We just finished South America for the first time in 9 years. We were going to go there in 2020. And of course, we all know what happened. So that threw everybody's schedule out the window, and it took us a while to put together the right time to go back to South America. But we just did, and it was great. And earlier this year, we did Asia and Australia. So it's time to take the Duck Tour to Europe. That's next year, next
Awesome.
April specifically, starting in April.
So you've got the Beer for Dolphins tour, and then are you going out on the road after that?
No, I don't have plans to tour between then and the Aristocrats Europe right now. What I really want to do is, and I haven't talked about this too much publicly yet, but I have, like, for the years leading up to when I created Scenes from the Flood, for 4 years, that album slowly built inside my head until I basically had the whole freaking thing in my head. Like, if I could have, there was a point where in 2017 where if I could have just opened my mouth and the sound of a record would have come out, it would have been pretty close to what we eventually all got. And I'm not there yet with a new album, but I'm really close. And I have 6 or 7 songs. It's gonna be shorter, and I know the name of the album. I know the names of the songs. I know the running order. I know what they all sound like in my head. Just little details are being filled in, uh, like like a jigsaw puzzle or like a pointillism thing. That's how it works for me. It's just very, very strange. But I need to do those demos, and it's been a long time since I've had time to do something like that. So that's what I'm hoping to do in the coming months. I'm putting pressure on myself to do it by talking about it in this interview.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. We need more music from you. And
Yeah.
are you going to be surprising us with a different lineup, or will it be a lot of the names that we've already seen you with?
I don't know. I don't know. I do know that I would like to have a more consistent lineup because it really does make mixing the album easier, and it just makes it easier to just create, to really kind of hit the bullseye on a really, really sweet, pleasing mix throughout the album. So it's something I'm keeping in mind.
Cool. All right. So brianbeller.bandcamp.com and buy this new. It's out on CD. I didn't know there were
Well,
physical
this
copies.
was a limited run, and I only did very few. I signed them, and they're gone.
Okay.
So that was for like people who are on my mailing list and people who, which you should do. You should go sign up for my mailing list at my website, brianbeller.com. There's a mailing list link called Beller Bites. But also on social media, I just told people, listen, if you're interested in this, I'll make a short run. I'll sign them all. and that happened before I went to South America. That was in July. But
Very cool.
there's the digital album is still up on Bandcamp, and eventually it'll be up on streaming, but it's not up yet. So
Well,
Bandcamp's the only place right now.
if you're watching this, go buy it. It's $6. It's worth every penny. It is
I know, right?
fantastic. It's fantastic.
Seriously, Anthony, thank you. And I think it's insane that is this the first time that we did this?
This first time, yes, you've been on the
That's
channel.
crazy. You've been around forever, and I've heard about Make Weird Music forever. How long have you been doing this?
11 years. And
11 years.
You and I have so many mutual friends. I'm close friends with Andy West.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Keneally and I are friends.
Did you say you live in Arizona? Are you in Phoenix?
I do. Yeah, I'm in Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay.
I used to work for and live with Steve Vai, so I've got that whole connection.
When was that?
A long time ago,
Like
2003.
the Hollywood House?
Yeah, 2003. Yeah.
That was when they met. That was when the Metropole stuff was going on.
Yeah, I think I got Steve connected with Opperman, so
What a small world.
yeah,
That's
it's a
crazy.
small world.
Yeah.
But you guys all chose the path of musicianship. I chose the path of computer programmer. But I'm wasting interview time, so.
No, you're not. You're not. I know. I turned the tables on you. I'm sorry. Hey, listen. This life isn't for everybody. I can tell you that right now. I every day I speak to myself. Did I do this all wrong?
Well, I'll be honest. When I was working for Steve, I thought I want to be the next Steve Vai. You know, like every other teenager who grew up listening to that. And I had the chops. I wrote interesting music and all this. And then I met all of the musicians who orbit Steve on Favored Nations and, you know, living in LA or visiting LA. And they're living in vans and eating Taco Bell because that's all they can afford and working for free. And I was like, I thought if you just got good at guitar, you could, like, get famous and rich.
Right? You know, and that's the thing. And just to end with like a bit of a career thing here, which is like, you know, it took me 42 years to put together a career as a musician that was not pure subsistence living.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, I got a corporate job. I worked at SWR, Bass Amps.
That's right.
I was working there in 2003 when I was doing stuff with Steve.
I remember.
Because I couldn't figure out how to make a living in my 20s. And then I quit that and tried it again when I was 35, and I didn't figure it out until I was fortunate enough at 42 when kind of Dethklok, the Aristocrats, and Joe Satriani all kind of happened at the same time, and then it turned into something that's like a living. You know what I mean? I'm not running around in an Aston Martin or anything like that. It's a living, and I'm very, very grateful for it. But the wheel of fortune on this stuff is very capricious, and it's not fun.
Oh my goodness. It really is. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Let's
Thanks,
take a
Anthony.
listen to Cave Dweller before we close. Or yeah,
All right,
that's the next one.
Dirge.
All right.